This episode of the Focus Action Results podcast is brought to you by Accelerate Performance, creators of the Focus Action Results course and the FAR Planner. Welcome to the podcast that promises you'll be much more productive with me, your host, Ralph Varcoe.
I have been around the block for a while, sort of 25 plus years running sales and marketing and strategy and alliance teams. Mostly in technology, in some AI companies, through startups, and also in corporates, global roles, national roles, etc. And have seen quite a lot of things that work really well and an awful lot of things that don't work at all. And some of those were initiatives that I put in place and then they bombed, and that's fine. You learn from those and then you put other initiatives in place and then they work. So I've got quite a lot of experience of both sides of that coin. And one of the key things that I now do is I help individuals and I help sales and marketing teams and people to accelerate their performance. That's through coaching. It's through things like Salesforce and sales candidate assessments. It's through actually implementing an entire sales process and team for companies. But it's all very much focused towards getting the sales engine right and on the people that make that work. So that's my 30 seconds, Ian.
Cool. Oh, so now I can ask you my good question, which is, if you'd like to share a bit of your I know that the people bit is your passion, and that you've done a huge amount in that, and obviously it's the critical bit that we've not fitted into the puzzle yet, is how do you get those great people on board, and what do you do with them when they're in there?
Yeah, and I think it's important to say that while I focus on salespeople and marketing people, those are only a couple of teams within an organization, and so by not talking about them, I don't seek to diminish their worth or the need for them or the amazing stuff that they do. You can sell as much as you like, but if you haven't got a customer service team or an operations team or product people developing, you don't have a business. So that and all of those teams are critical. But my focus is around salespeople. So if we continue the kind of marketing theme and then through aligning with the KPIs and then down to the people themselves, what I would ask is, and I always ask this of the founders of tech startups or the SVPs of sales, how many of your sales team are being successful? How many of them are on their number? And they'll say to me, oh, well, look at my spreadsheet. I've got KPIs that say that these 15 people are under their number by quite a lot. These people are sort of a little bit under, but they can probably pull it back. And here are the high flyers. And then I say, so why are those 15 people under the line? Well, they're just not selling enough. Well, that's what the data tells us, but why? Not sure. Okay, so why are the people that are selling really well? And they go, well, they always sell really well. Okay, but why? Don't know. Now, the reality is you can have an amazing amount of stuff that comes in top of funnel. You can have great opportunities. The company does a brilliant job at putting its message out there, at evangelizing, and then they come through into the funnel. But ultimately, it'll be the sales team that pushes those through to closure or not. And so having a sales team that is the best functioning team in the organization is critical to your success as an organization. So it's the first thing I would always do is look at assessing the sales team to understand what drives them, how they operate, what are the things that they do which are actually sort of part of sales DNA. Sales DNA is a really important thing because there are certain elements of being a salesperson that you can coach, right? So you can coach competencies around qualification or presentation skills or how to close deals, those sorts of things. But there are sales DNA elements which basically aren't coachable, right? Here's an example. You've got some people that are really good at controlling their emotions, and you've got other people that aren't. If you're a sort of person who can't control their emotions, you're probably not best suited to being a new business development person, because you are likely you're more likely to find it a challenge to reconcile this issue of not knowing when or whether things will close, that sort of uncertainty, than somebody who's an account manager who's got a relationship, who's building a relationship. So that's an example of a DNA aspect. You'll find that some people are really good at handling rejection and others aren't. Again, it's not a coachable thing. You can talk about it, you can sort of reconcile, you know, and think what's, you know, what does a rejection mean and how can you deal with it? I mean, when I was much younger, I used to sell perfumes door to door. So I would carry my man bag over my shoulder with lots of bottles of perfume in, and I'd walk up and I'd knock on the door and I'd go, "Oh, hello, do you like to smell nice, sir? Oh, you would, sir. Oh, very good. Let me spray you with this, sir." And they'd kind of go, "Oh, that smells quite nice." And I go, "Oh, brilliant. Would you like a bottle, sir?" And they you know, kind of like, "Not sure, actually, no." Off you go. And it's like, oh, okay. You know, it's like I've spent 20 minutes just doing my best perfume sales job ever, and I've just been rejected. Now I sold some and I really enjoyed it, and I used to go home smelling amazing, but it wasn't for me ultimately, because I'm not brilliant at handling rejection, right? So that's why you should never put me as a new business hunter. I never was. I was never good at that. But put me as an account manager or an account director, and I'll build an amazing relationship with my customer, right? So that's an example of a DNA. You can't really train it. You can't teach it. People are either, you know, like that or they're not. So understanding your sales team, who's playing in what position, and understanding then what are the coachable elements that you can train, the sales competencies, is a critical thing to do. Because if you've got somebody in the wrong place, if you've got me, for example, you put me in a business development role, you're not going to get as much out of me as if you put maybe Ian in a business development role, right? Who knows how to do that and that. But if Ian was an account manager, maybe he wouldn't be getting you know, as much out of a customer as I would be. So we could be in the wrong place. Both of us are under that line. We're part of that 15 in your sales team that are underperforming. And you could look at us both and you could go, "Do you know what? You're not performing. I'm going to get rid of you and I'm going to hire other people in." Whereas actually, if you did a full assessment, you would then understand, well, actually, Ian's better suited to new business, Ralph's better suited to account management. Let's swap them over. And then all of a sudden, we're no longer part of the 15. We're flying because we're doing the things that suit us. So, sorry, a long answer to, you know, making sure that you really focus on what the strengths of your people are to get the best out of them and for your company.
What do you do then when you've worked that out? Or what happens when you, so go back a bit, in fact, so I want to ask a different question. If you go back a bit and you say, so you know what the strengths are that you have, are you planning in? So are you doing some planning at the front end that says, we need some people that look like this and we need some people that look like this? You've almost, do you start again with a clean sheet of paper and say, "Oh, I want these roles. Let's see what we've got," or do you see what you've got, see where you can fit them, and then how do you actually approach when you get into that scenario?
Well, it's a little bit of both. So, you know, if you have done the work of understanding what your purpose is, defining what your ambition is, looking at the way that you're trying to drive your organization and how you're trying to, you know, drive it, you should have, or you will come up with, a very clear view about, you know, how many hunters, how many farmers, you know, how many customer service reps you need, etc. And so you shape the team. You can then look at your current sales organization and see, does it fit? I can then look at the assessment of each individual and go, right, we've got the people and we can fit them into the roles that they're in. And maybe they're in the right roles. It's just that some of them have got sales competencies which could be coached, in which case you put a coaching program around them. You actually upskill, you train them so that they become better at closing or qualifying or pipeline management or all of those sorts of things. If, as I said before, if the DNA just isn't right, then you probably want to work out where you put them in order to make sure that they're going to flourish. I would also make sure that I've got a hiring plan. And let me ask you this, Ian, you've done this a lot, and I know, Yamila, you've hired people in marketing. Have you ever done a full assessment of a salesperson's sales DNA, their will to sell, and their sales competencies as part of the interview process?
Well, I think so. I might have a slightly. I think we did a pretty good job of that in my past life. We probably didn't do, but we looked at. But we were. I would say we were outliers in this, and that we were looking at values and motivations. So that is kind of your values are like your DNA. I suspect that's kind of what you're talking about, isn't it? And we built those out. What we didn't do was put anybody through any experience some activities to see whether actually they could do it or not. But I think we had a reasonably high propensity of success rate by doing that level of assessment. And actually we did that because to ensure that we got a retention rate in the business that made us successful. So we couldn't live with the churn rate that we had in junior salespeople. And it was to make sure that we assess effectively and get the right people in. Made it harder because it narrowed the pool significantly. We got a retention rate from about 60 to 70% year one retention rate up to about 85 to 90% year one retention rate by putting that level of sophistication in.
And that is the critical point, right? So you have used an assessment, like a formalized assessment, to reduce the risk of the wrong hire, and therefore to reduce the churn rate. And you know, the recruitment model is an interesting model. They make money by putting people into your organization. They don't mind whether those people fail or succeed beyond the period where they collect their fee, right? So if they fail, well, then they get the opportunity to sell in again. It's their business model, right? So they don't like these assessments because they want to be able to churn more people through the business. But that costs the business money, like a lot of money. It costs for lost opportunity, and it costs for morale, and it costs because customers see not just one account manager, but then they see another one and then another one because people have churned through and they've not been successful. So if you go through a process where you have a really rigorous assessment as part of the interview process, you may actually find that you spend less time interviewing because you've actually gone through that process before candidates get put forward to you. When you look at hiring them, you know what their sales DNA is, which is a much bigger predictor of whether they're going to be good at selling for you than the fact that they've spent 10 years at a company that looked and felt a bit similar to you. But actually, to be honest, the stock market, you're always given a warning. Past performance is no predictor of future gain or benefit. And it's the same when you're recruiting people. But if you go through an assessment, you understand all of that. So I guess my message is really know your sales team so that they're in the right place, and then have a plan about how to hire when you're growing, or how to hire to backfill those that you may decide aren't right for your organization or who naturally decide they want to move on. Because if you don't have an engine that is truly firing on all cylinders, you're leaving money on the table. And all the good work that's been done from a marketing point of view, and then from an alignment perspective within the organization, can be diminished significantly because you haven't got the right people doing the right jobs at the right time in the right way that suit them and suit your organization.
So have you got a couple, can you give us three of that out of all of that? So we've covered the science, the coaching, the making sure that you do the assessment piece, understand the DNA, really understand what you need to be able to do those roles. So the criteria that you need in each of those different roles, or a whole range of different topics in there. Could you pick three that you think are the top three things that you need to make sure?
Yes, so I would say first thing is define what your sales organization is going to look like, needs to look like, based on who you want to be, who you are as an organization, what your ambition is. The second thing is then make it a plan, make it a priority in Q1 2021 to know your sales team like you've never known them before. right? Because only once you know them as individuals can you then do the third thing, which is to put a coaching program around them, to know who to upskill when, on what topic. Not just a generic training that you send everybody through that wastes half the people's time because it's just a bit of a refresher and they mostly do that anyway, or it just falls on deaf ears, but something that is really tailored to the individual. Because if you do that, if you just make a sort of 2 or 3% gain on each of the 21 core sales competence areas, compound those, and all of it, and you compound them not just for the individual, but you compound them for the individual and then across the entire sales team. And then all of a sudden you've got more pipeline coming through, you've got more opportunities being closed, you've got happier customers, you've got happier salespeople because they're earning more. So those are my 3 things. Know what your shape of your sales team should be, know your people, put in place a plan for each of your people as individuals.
I hope that was helpful for you today and you enjoyed listening to the Focus Action Results podcast. If it was either helpful or enjoyable, or heaven forfend both, please subscribe, leave feedback, share with friends and family, and tweet it loud with the hashtag Focus Action Results podcast.